If you've worked with Rails for a while, you're probably familiar with the importance of the @accessible line in your model and how it applies to security. If not, watch episode 26 for some details on that. Now, the issue one often runs into when working with @accessible is that it's not very flexible. Oftentimes, you want this behavior to be dependent upon the current user's permissions. Now let me show you what I mean through this example application. I have a simple forum which has many topics, and users can create new topics or edit one. So let me edit a topic here, and I can either rename the topic or mark it as sticky so it stays at the top of the list. However, I only want users who are marked as an admin to be able to mark a topic as sticky. So if I try to update a topic, currently any user, even those who are not an admin, are able to mark that given topic as a sticky. So this @accessible line, where I allow the sticky attribute to be set, needs to be dependent upon the current user, which I don't have access to right here. So how do I do this? Well, the current solution is to pass in an as option, and we can say only make these attributes settable as an admin role, or let's make just the name settable for other roles such as a user role. So this means whenever I create or update a topic, such as in this topic's controller, I need to pass in that as option. So here, where I'm creating a new topic, I'm going to pass in an as option and make it dependent upon the current user. So this is a little messy here, but it's just a quick example. So I'm going to see if he's an admin, and if so, I'll make it the admin role, and otherwise I'll give it the user role. So I should do this also when updating a topic, which happens in this update action when we set update attributes and pass in the mass assignment parameters, then also pass in the as option here. So trying this out again, we now get the behavior we want. Editing a topic doesn't allow us to set the sticky attribute. It says that attribute is protected. However, if we sign in as an admin, in this case I'll just edit this user's profile and mark him as an admin, then he is able to mark a topic as sticky. Now I have a couple of issues with this solution. One is that the authorization logic could potentially get rather complicated, especially on a forum application like this, and placing it right in line here in each of the models doesn't really feel like the right location. Also, it's not very dynamic here. If I want to change this behavior depending on the user's attributes or the topic's attributes, that's really difficult to do here. Several months ago, Yehuda Katz wrote up a couple of ideas for improving how Rails handles mass assignment. One solution is to use a signed token in the form. So a form would send this along with the other fields, and it would only grant access to update the fields that are included in that form. This is an interesting idea, but it didn't really gain a lot of traction. There are some security concerns with it, and it doesn't really address how to accept user parameters outside of a form, such as through an API. His second idea is more practical, and that is to move the protection into the controller layer instead of the model layer. This raised a lot of interesting discussion in the comments on this gist, and it's kind of fun to go through and see all the different ideas that other people have surrounding this. Shortly afterwards, David Hannemeyer Hansen released a gem called Strong Parameters that provides an elegant solution to this problem. It allows you to call permit on the request parameters and restrict what attributes can be passed in. Now the current plan is to add this functionality that's provided by this gem into Rails 4. So if you want to get a sneak peek of how this might behave in Rails 4, check out this gem. Let's do that here. So I'm going to apply strong parameters to this forum application to see how it works. First I'll go into the gem file for this app and add the strong parameters gem, and you'll need to run the bundle command to install it. Next I'll go into my application config file because there's an option in here setting whitelist attributes to true, which I want to comment out because that forces us to use @accessible, but I don't want to with the strong parameter gem. And then next I need to change the models, so going to the topic model here, I no longer need to define @accessible here. However, in this state, the model is currently insecure. To enable strong parameters, we need to include a module under active model called forbidden attributes protection. However, I don't like this because it requires that we add something to the model to make it secure. Instead, I prefer to have security by default. So instead, I want to add this to active record base so all models have this by default. I'll do that inside of an initializer here. Let's call it strong parameters.rb. And I'll just paste that in and call this on active record base, call send on that, passing in the include method to include that given module. So now when I restart my app, we have security by default. Whenever I edit a topic and try to update it, it says forbidden attributes because mass assignment is protected by default. To fix this, I need to call permit on the parameters which are passed into mass assignment, such as in this update action in the controller. So instead of this crazy as option, which I set earlier, I can instead call permit on this and pass in whatever attributes I want to allow. For now, let's just say name and sticky attributes just to set them statically. And now I have the ability to update a topic. Now to keep things clean and dry, this is often moved into its own method. Let's call it topic params. And I'll define that as a private method down here at the bottom of the controller, topic params, which has that same functionality. Now, since we're in a controller here, we can easily make this dependent upon the current user. So let me check if we have a current user and that he is an admin. And then if he is, let's allow access to those two attributes. And otherwise, let's only allow access to the name. So this will end up doing basically the same thing we did with @accessible and the roles. Now there are a couple of changes that we might want to make here. One is, instead of accessing the parameters for the topic through a hash syntax like this, we can call require, and that will ensure that that topic parameters exist. So that way if they don't exist, we won't get a nil exception, but instead something a little more presentable to the user. Another change is that we can call permit with a bang to allow all attributes to be passed in, so you might want to do this for an admin, for example. Now at this point you may be wondering, how does strong parameters work, and where are these methods defined? It looks like these methods are defined on this params hash. Well, let's do some experimenting here in the console. First of all, it's important to understand that passing in a simple normal hash to mass assignment will not do any kind of protection. We can see that if we pass in an attribute into a topic.new call, that it just creates a new topic like normal. So the way strong parameters works is it overrides the params method in the controller and passes it through an instance of action controller parameters. And so through here, if we pass in a hash, this object will behave like a hash but with some special methods such as permit and require. So if we pass these parameters to topic.new, then this is going to raise an exception because it is not permitted to set those attributes through mass assignment. So this is really handy because if you're ever passing in attributes through a trusted source, such as your tests, you can just pass them straight on through. However, if you ever have an untrusted source, you can always go through action controller parameters. Just watch out for cases where the params hash might get converted to a normal hash, and that would go through unprotected. I don't think this is too much of an issue, though I haven't really run across cases where this happens. Now, I've read about some concerns about defining the attribute protection in the controller layer like this, but I find this solution to be very flexible and allow you to easily refactor it elsewhere. Let me give you an example. I have another topics controller under the API version 1 module here, and this is designed to return a JSON API, but I would like similar permissions for the attributes here. Now I don't want to duplicate this method into the other controller because any changes to the authorization logic here will likely need to happen in both places. So a common solution for handling cases where code needs to be duplicated across classes is to move it into a module. So let's try that first. For lack of a better location, I'm just going to add this to the lib directory. I'll make a new file here called, let's say, topic_params.rb. And then I'll just define a new module here with that name and paste in that same method definition. And then it's easy enough to just include this module in each of those controllers. Now, while this would work okay, I'm not really a fan of extracting out modules like this, and that's because the interface and the dependencies aren't really clearly defined. Here we're accessing the current user and the params method on the controller, so anything that needs to include this module needs to have that same interface, and as we change this module, who knows what else we use within that controller. So this solution isn't very flexible and doesn't allow us to easily access this functionality outside of a controller, so I'm not going to go with a module here. Instead, I'm going to put this logic into its own class, and I'm going to add it to the models directory here. Even though it doesn't inherit from active record, it's still a model in my book. I'm going to call this permitted_params.rb. So I'll define that class, permitted params, and I'm going to have this inherit from a struct because that's just a quick way to define accessors and the initializer. So let's say this accepts a params hash and also a user record. And I'll paste in that same method and make a few changes here because the user is called just plain user instead of current user. And also I want to just rename this method to topic. So now with this in place, the dependencies for this logic are nicely defined, and I can easily instantiate this class from within the controller. I'm going to do that in the application controller so it's available everywhere. So I'll define a new method here called permitted params, and let's instantiate that object and also pass in the params hash and also the current user record. And I'm also going to cache this in a local instance variable here called permitted params. There we go. So now with this in place, I can easily call permitted params.topic or whatever other resource I might set up there, and that will return the parameters that I can just pass into the mass assignment when creating a new topic. And I can easily do that inside of the API as well without any kind of duplication of the logic. So let's try this out. I'm currently signed in as an admin, so I'm able to change the sticky functionality of a topic, and it changes that topic. However, if I am not an admin and try to edit a given topic and make that not sticky, even though an exception wasn't raised here, it ignored that sticky attribute since I did not permit it, and that topic is still marked as sticky. Now ideally, this checkbox won't show up at all if the user doesn't have permission, so how would we do that without duplicating the authorization logic? It would be nice if we could use the permitted params in the view as well. So here's that topic form with the sticky field, and let's only show this if, let's say, permitted params, let's have a method called topic attributes. Let's see if it includes the sticky attribute, and then if it does, let's show this field. So to get this to work, in the permitted params, I'm going to add that topic attributes method. I'll do this just by pasting it in to save us a little bit of time. Basically, topic is going to call permit and call topic attributes here, and this is where the logic is contained about what attributes are allowed for the different type of users. One more change I need to make is inside of the application controller, I need to make this permitted params method a helper method so that it's available inside of the views. So with those few changes, if I reload the page, the sticky field is now gone because I'm not able to edit it, but if I set myself as an admin and try editing a topic, I can change that sticky field. Overall, I'm really happy with the solution. In my opinion, it's a big step up over attribute accessible, and it's very flexible. I could define the authorization logic in the controller or in a separate class like I showed here. Now, I originally planned to demonstrate nested attributes here as well, but I wasn't able to find a solution I was happy enough with the current gem, but I'll post my findings in the show notes for this episode. Well, that's all for this episode. Thanks for watching.